My Dharma talk this morning is going to be based on a class that I recently took, and I think a couple other of you have taken it as well. It was the Wise Speech 6 weeks course with Oren J. Sofer, and who's a teacher, Vipassana teacher. Did you do it too, Monica? You look like you were nodding your head. Oh, well.
I did another class with him.
Okay. Anyway, so he's a Vipassana teacher with the insight meditation tradition in Spirit Rock, and he offered this class through the Barry Center in the Barry Center for Buddhist Studies in Barry, Massachusetts. So, and I decided to take the class because particularly now when there are so many things up regarding so many conversations around race and politics they're difficult conversations, but they're important conversations to have. And I, for one, did not feel very confident about being able to express myself without either contracting on the one side or getting activated on the other. So I thought, well, maybe this course will kind of help me with that, because it goes beyond just he offers the Buddhist teachings on right speech, but also had a lot of practices, particularly with nonviolent communication, that I thought would be really useful. So today, it was a 6 weeks course, so I can't cram it all into one Dharma talk. So today I just would like to talk about things from the first and second class. So it'd be more about the Buddhist, what Buddha had to say about wise speech. And then we'll talk a little bit about that, and then I'd like to do some practices so you guys can kind of play with it and see what you think, see how you do with it. So, okay. So the right speech, as you most of you all know, is the third element, if you will, a third step on the eightfold path to liberation or enlightenment. And the Pali name is Samavaka, and in English, sama means right, and vaka means speech, so hence right speech. It's generally understood that this idea of right is not so much right or wrong, but rather right in terms of whether it causes harm or does it cause suffering. Is it wise or is it unwise? It's from our highest nature or not. And so those are the kind of the ideas we think about when we think of the word right in terms of the eightfold path and the right speech and so forth, right intention, all of those. So, and then also coming with the idea of non-harming, there's also, it brings peace and liberation through speech that is wise and non-harmful. And also it brings in intentions of simplicity and kindness, harmlessness, of course, and compassion that is born out of the recognition that everyone suffers. So just some background. The Buddha obviously understood very well the power of speech. And the power of speech, on the one hand, can be used to promote creativity and ethics and all sorts of wonderful things. But on the other hand, it can also be used for malicious things. And some of the worst is manipulation, up and even to genocide. So in this sense, like actions and thoughts, speech has a valence, right? It can lead to karmic effects, or it can lead to merit, I presume, depending on the intent of the speaker. So right speech can lead to awakening in the individual, in a group, or a collective, when it's rooted in the understanding of the structure of reality, that everything is co-arising with everything else. And we can kind of see that communication is co-created. Our language is inherited, for example, but we put our particular brand on it, but it's not just ours. We are born into a place that speaks a language or a couple of languages. And our thoughts are not entirely ours either. They're strongly affected by our social and cultural surroundings. But every person has these characteristics of having speech and thought that comes from other places, but also that we use to express ourselves. And so every person affects others around them as a dynamic co-creator. So we're all creating something when we speak. So presumably we want to create good things, not bad things. So the Buddha has some guidelines for that. And so he defines right speech is this abstinent. He looks at it from the negatives. A lot of the Buddhist stuff, you look at it, but something isn't, is how it's defined. So in this case, right speech is the abstinence from false speech. So what is false speech? Well, clearly, it's bald-faced lies. That's false speech. That's extreme. And it's not, it's refraining from lying for the sake of advantage for one's own self and for others as well. And also for some trifling worldly thing, worldly end. Half-truths are included in this too. And slight exaggerations might be included in this. Now we're getting a little bit dicey for me. The last one is humorous untruths. Yikes! I never heard that one before. Doesn't everybody embellish a story for humorous effects? I don't know. Anyway, so that was included in this list. So beyond false speech is divisive speech. And as the name indicates, it's pitting people against each other. And we see a lot of that right about now. We see that in our political spheres. Buddha is not in favor of that. The third aspect of right speech is malicious and harsh speech. Malicious, obviously, has the intent of harming others and includes judging and blaming. Harsh speech, on the other hand, is rough or hard speech that's hurtful to others or offensive, bordering on anger when you talk to somebody. And it's not particularly conducive to concentration. And the fourth kind of speech that we should abstain from, according to the Buddha, is idle and useless speech. And gossiping is included in that, which is, and we can understand why it causes a lot of trouble, but it's also, a lot of times, I know in working in an office, it's the glue. Unfortunately, people gossip a lot to form alliances, I guess. But this kind of speech is not a positive thing, of course, and then there's useless speech, where one is just kind of talking for the sake of talking and wasting words and not using words purposefully. And I've heard a statement about that, how if you can't improve on silence, just don't say anything, which is maybe kind of harsh, but I think that there's something to be said for that. So in terms of gossiping, one way that sometimes people think things are true and then they pass them along, and I think that that's where this problem comes in. And so one way to safeguard the truth actually is by saying, this is my conviction, or this is how I think it is, I'm not sure. But to say it's the truth is not exactly right. So, and that's the problem with gossip. It's often not based in fact. So there's the 4 criteria for wise speech. This is, again, according to the Buddhist teachings. And it's the opposite. How do we cultivate speech that is truthful? And why is that? Why is that so important? Well, because if you're in relationship, there isn't a relationship if there's no truth. You know, if there's a problem with truth, there's serious problems with the relationship. So another criteria is that speech be helpful rather than divisive. So do we know when we're speaking? Do we know why we're speaking? This stuff is really crazy when you think about it, because I guess it's probably a bad habit of mine. Sometimes I just say things and I'm not even thinking about necessarily what I'm talking about. I mean, I'm just in conversation with somebody and I'm just thinking about it. So anyway, this is interesting. So are we speaking out of habit? That's another, is that what's going on? And if we become aware, we can ask, that, oh, maybe I'm doing that. Will what I'm saying actually contribute? It seems like speech comes out so fast, how you're not even aware of it, or at least that's my experience. This comes out so fast, and it's like, whoops. Anyway, so speech we should aim for kind speech, the gentle speech, one that offers goodwill, versus malicious speech, for example. So when one is speaking or about to speak, the question that one might ask is, where am I coming from at this moment? Is this from a kind place, or am I'm a little peeved here, and it's coming out? So it's just a question to ask. Is it from kindness? And if we actually are aware of our purpose and are showing kindness and goodwill, it can be transformative. We can have a really positive impact on others. The 4th criteria is being timely, that is context sensitive. So in questions that one might ask oneself is it the right time and place to say something? For example, if you're going to ask somebody a very, very personal question, you wouldn't probably want to do it in a crowd of co-workers or in a public place. You would probably want to pull the person aside. So it's things like that. In terms of context, the things to consider: context and social dimension, where you consider power differentials, gender, and race. And it's important, and that's particularly what's up these days, is attending to those differentials and honoring them. So well-spoken speech can lead to an awakening. Whereas harmful speech can lead to perhaps obsessive thinking, and when that happens, we wonder, what qualities are we reinforcing or strengthening when we're caught in our negative thinking? So we can change our thoughts when we're aware of it, become aware of it, to more beneficial qualities. So, for example, your self-talk may be, I really goofed up on this. Oh, what an idiot! And so and so you're just reinforcing that kind of self-talk. And as I say, if one is aware of it, they can turn that and say, well, encourage oneself. We can do better next time. Oops, and go on. So, in terms of practicing right speech, we can use other I'll call them elements, I guess, of the Eightfold Path. And for example, right view. Right view can be used for discernment, for discerning right from, is it harmful speech or is it actually in the category of right speech? So, is it divisive? Is it abusive? Is it idle chatter or is it lying? One can use right effort. So you can, in using right effort, attempt to enter into right speech, attempt to change how we speak. And then mindfulness, too, can be used to abandon harmful speech and to enter and actually remain in right speech, so change a pattern. So abstaining from these, we can abstain from certain behaviors, as I mentioned earlier, divisive speech, false speech, etc. But we can do other things as well. That is to say, if we want to be truthful, work on truthful speech, we can abandon the malicious speech that divides people and instead use speech that actually go the other direction, to use speech to actually unite people, not just abstain from something, but go the other direction, to unite people who are divided, or to promote friendship, or to enjoy concord or accord, and speaking words that promote concord. In terms of divisive speech or harsh speech, we can abandon those, but then go the other direction. We can speak words that are gentle and pleasing to the ear, go straight to the heart. We can be courteous and agreeable, just in general, to other people. In terms of the idle chatter, okay, we abandon gossip and idle chatter. And then we pay attention and actually speak at the right time. Speak fact instead of just thought or observation, but you're not really sure. You can speak on what is good instead of the negative. Or speaking words that are worth recording, that are reasonable, moderate, and beneficial. And speak generally in a way that your verbal conduct is in accordance with the Dharma, in fact. So there's a quote that was contained in some of the readings that we had on right speech, and this kind of relates to what I just said. Abstaining from speech is not an end in itself. If you want to cultivate freedom with the Eightfold Path, it can be useful to investigate the inner conditions that motivate such speech. So if we settle deeply in our hearts, for example, before we speak, what would we say? Would we be saying something different? And does our speech express goodwill, friendliness, or compassion? So the first, is that true when we've been talking? We just observe. And if it's not, then why isn't it? What's going on there? So this can be information for our practice. It's not intended as a way to beat ourselves up. That's not the intention whatsoever. But rather just to be more aware, and as it's a way to support our practice. Because if our inner life is well cared for, it's much easier to speak wisely. So one of the main tools, of course, when working with right speech is using mindfulness when speaking and listening. And mindfulness is the doorway to right speech. And we can't really make changes in our communication unless we are aware. So awareness is, like in everything else, is the first step. So in general, what we can do is pay attention to the information that our body gives us. The body is constantly putting out messages if we but pay attention to it. So when we're listening or when we're speaking, how does the body feel? What sensations are present? We can tune into that. You can notice what we say and how consciously did we choose the words. We can notice our feelings, what emotions are present. That's a good one. We can notice our intentions and what is motivating us to speak. And that leads to the next section, the foundations of mindful communication. So, these are real important. Effective communication requires presence. So to have clarity and connection in our dialogues and relationships, we actually need to be there. That's kind of a no-brainer. But I know that in particularly with people you know well, if you're hanging out with them a lot and stuff, you may start doing the dishes or while you're talking, and then you just kind of zone out a little bit. So I think it's that kind of stuff. So if you're not present, you're not going to have much access to the tools that you've learned, or your good intentions. You're not really on top of it. So the practice is to lead with presence. And what that means is to start all interactions and return to embodied presence. And so it's like a constant checking back in to make, am I present here? Am I present? Paying attention to that. And actually be there. Because if you're not present, you're not going to have, as I said, much access to other things, your good intentions and so forth. So, so keep it, and the suggestion is that put down everything else, your projects, your thoughts, and so forth, and really pay attention, give your full attention to whomever you're speaking, and at the same time have some awareness in your body, and trust presence as a source of your stability, empathy, mutuality, and information. So if you feel your body, its weight and heaviness, or just slightly just check in. Feel your hands or your feet, or just check in to see if you're present. Notice notice your choice to speak or listen, and then pause or slow down. Sometimes we can speak quickly, and so we're not really paying attention. So if you slow down, you're more readily able. So the first thing is presence. The second thing is intention. And intention determines the direction of the conversation. Intention is the motivation for the communication. It's actually, intention is where we're coming from, as I mentioned before, how important where we're coming from. It's why we speak and listen. It's the motivation for our communication, and it's what drives it. So many times our interactions are directed by our impulses. Our impulses to get what we want, to make a point, to be heard, to be seen in a certain way. And yet the foundation for productive dialogue and skillful negotiation is the quality of connection and understanding we create. So I want to read that again because that's a really important point. As the foundation for productive dialogue and skillful negotiation is the quality of the connection and understanding we create. So that understanding is a real important thing. Instead of us trying to put our point in, it's gaining the understanding. So in order to practice that, it's joining the conversation with curiosity and care. And specifically, the intention to understand is perhaps the most powerful and transformative ingredient in relationship and communication. So if we let go a little of the outcome, we can see what happens when we have sincere interest in understanding another's experience. I pretty sure it will change the quality of the conversation. And we can cultivate and return to the simple yet powerful intention to understand. Cultivate and return to the simple yet powerful intention to understand. So, the third part of the foundation of communication here is attention. So we have presence, intention, and then attention. And the attention shapes the experience. So where we place our attention shapes what we experience. So if we're focusing on the faults of another person, for example, we fail to see them as a whole person. Most of us tend to focus primarily on the storyline, the content of the situation, or on judgments. But learning how to skillfully attend to the essential aspects of the message can transform a dialogue. So the first component of this training is identifying what matters. What is at stake here? What's kind of behind all the storyline? So the practice with this is the focusing on what matters. And in listening for what matters in yourself and others. And you can ask yourself inwardly, what matters most about this conversation or this statement? And that kind of inquiry helps us get beyond the storyline and just surface positions to underlying values and needs in a situation. And that's going to create more room for understanding, collaboration, and creative problem solving. If you have an example, if you have someone that's really oriented towards, if you're doing a project, towards form, making things look nice and on the page and so forth, and somebody else is really into the content. The content is what is important. And you can understand both sides, right? But if there's understanding between the two, and how can we collaborate to have both work, for both of us? And then you have an overall good product. So, in observations in dealing with attention is observation. So you're looking at what happened. If you're working with another person, what happened? Without interpretation, so that's how you keep away from the storyline. Your feelings, how do you feel about it? On the inside, without any blame, without it putting blame anywhere, how do you feel about it? And what are the needs? What matters? The deeper values or shared goals and objective between you and the other person. And finally, requests. What would you like to see happen next? How can you move forward? And for connection, for example, we're asking for empathy, for reflection, or for information. It's something really concrete. And for solutions, we can come up with practical agreements that might meet all of the needs present. So we can integrate these principles, and it takes time and dedication and persistence. Just starting with the awareness is something, but it's worthy. It can really change things. If one's patient, it can make profound changes in one's life and relationships and inner experience. So I would like to do, if you're willing, to do a practice exercise. And the idea is what we're trying to accomplish is have more choice and flexibility in our conversations and be able to draw on our wisdom, because we all have it. We all have our inner wisdom, and sometimes we just miss it. And so we want to be able to draw on our wisdom and also our wholesome intentions. I think most people want to do that. They just get going and zoop, we missed it. But it all depends on being present, more present. So for this exercise, each person will practice, we're going to get into little groups, and we'll practice speaking and listening with presence And one person will be the speaker. And how many people are there?
We have 23 people.
Okay.
How many people would you like in a room?
Well, I was thinking 3 people.
Okay, we can do that.
Um, yeah, 3 people, and it'll be for. I don't want to bop us out yet. I got to explain all the instructions, but I was thinking for 3 people, 25 minutes should be enough time. Okay, so the speaker is going to be speaking before. When you first get together, you need to decide who's going to go first in the group, and then the person will have one person speaking, obviously, and 2 listening, and that'll be for 4 minutes. And so before you start, you take a few. All 3 of you will take a few minutes just to kind of settle in and get present. Okay. And you can close your eyes or take a deep breath or do whatever helps to make you feel more present. Just, another thing, you can find the weight in your body or see where your feet touch the ground or whatever, however you're sitting. So anyway, just get in a state of presence. And so the job of the listeners is to listen silently with your full attention, no crosstalk. Notice how it feels just to listen without commenting, asking questions, responding verbally, and don't try to fix anything or solve anything. And then see if you can, while you're listening, keep a small amount of awareness with your body. So you're sensing your hands maybe, or just your overall sense of being here or being there. So that's the listeners. The speakers, before you begin speaking, set a clear intention in your mind to take your time and speak with awareness. So you probably want to slow it down. So consider this as an experiment. The goal is not to share. You're going to be talking about how you're doing right now, but that's not what the focus is. The focus is talking about that, but practice staying aware as you speak. And when you're ready, you speak for 4 minutes about how you're doing generally. And so what you want to figure out is can you feel your body at all as you speak? Just note that. Do you note your hands, your feet, your heart? And does it help you to stay present, to slow down a little, or to pause? So those are things to keep in mind while you're speaking. So then the speaker goes 4 minutes, and then what I would suggest is if you can have paper and pen close by, after that person goes, just jot down a few notes of what you noted, listeners, to your own experience with the listening with the other person, and also the awareness of your own. The awareness of your own awareness of your presence as your, of your own body, awareness of your own body, of your presence there. Is that clear? Yes? Okay. So then you'll trade off, and so all 3 people will have an opportunity to speak and to listen twice. So just write down after each person, just quickly write down whatever you noted, and then you'll switch, and then you'll all have about 5 or 6 minutes or so to discuss what you noticed. And then how was it to speak and try to stay present, and how was it just to listen with presence, and what was challenging, easy, or surprising. So that's the practice. So
Laurie, at the end of your talk, you talk about underlying values. And then I think you said three things, empathy,
Oh,
and I didn't get the other two if there were three.
yeah. Well, it was talking about requests. Is that it? There was empathy, reflection, or information. When you're looking for
Okay.
connection, it's yeah. So I guess it's that. When you're looking for connection, what you're doing is you're either asking for empathy, or for reflection, or for information.
Okay.
On the
Thank
other
you.
person. Okay. So if everybody's cool with that, then ready to roll, we can do it. Back, everyone. So I'm curious, is there anyone that would like to talk about their experience, how that was? How did you do on being able to, with your awareness of self while listening, or awareness while talking? Sandra.
I just thank you so much because I really was, for me, it was just I discovered something very important for me.
Ah,
How important is, I work a lot with the body, but speaking and just be attentive with the body, it was just a turn out for me.
yeah.
To really, it's more like my body's just telling me how I feel. If I can just speak through that, instead just go with my mind, that is all my conditions, my habits and all that. And yes, I noticed that big feeling sensation to be connected with the body when I'm talking. So I noticed that how important is that.
That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, as I know, for me, it can be really difficult. I know I can do it when I pay attention to it, but so many times I'm not paying attention to it, and I'm just totally unaware, and it makes such a huge a difference.
Yeah. I hope I will remember.
I'll remind you next
Yes.
time I talk to you.
Yes.
Thank you, Sandra. Anybody else have any comment? Anything they might want to share?
I will say that I was glad to see other people wiping their eyes, that it was a very intimate time for we three. And I think part of it is that we were working so to be in our body, and therefore facades were dropped, and just such a feeling of connection.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. It's so important right now.
Even over the screen, you know.
Even over the screen. That's the miracle of it, you know? It's really surprising to me, but it does work. Darcy, thank you, Joan.
And there, I unmuted myself. I was so grateful for that. It's tuning into our bodies. It seemed to create this connection, and Rosemarie started to talk, and it was sort of, and then she dropped into this very tender place. And what I was noticing in my body, because I was having some trouble with lava, and it was creating this knot in my stomach. It's like, wow, she just gave me this gift of vulnerability that made this knot start releasing. It was amazing. So, yeah, we had a very intimate little conversation also, and it was very beneficial.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear it.
I just thought it was, I really appreciated just almost having that space to permission almost, really, even though the permission's already there. It felt like having the permission to talk from a real sort of state of presence, and to be able to really connect to myself and to connect to other at the same time. And it was like communicating without hindrance, like really being able to just have a different level of honesty about where I'm at right in that present moment, and to be able to feel each step of the way, and communicate in each moment exactly where I am in that moment, and that creating a deeper level of connection both ways for me. It felt really deep and connecting, and the listening, it just felt really good to just really stop and to just really listen fully with every aspect of myself to that person, and to really appreciate that person and what they were offering. I found it a really beautiful experience. I really enjoyed it, so thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. Yeah. You know, the crazy thing is it's always available. I don't know if we feel comfortable, if the other people feel comfortable. I guess there's a caveat there, but that it's always available. It's not like something special. It is special, but it's not special. It's there, and we can do that. It's just an amazing thing to realize. The drop of a hat, you can have a wonderful, lovely connection with people.
Oh, I just had another thought about that.
Just a minute.
You know, having Darcy's referred to the body. I was thinking that we actually do this. I think it's a human. I think most people that I know, if I'm gonna go meet a friend, I have in my purse all my preparation, my articles, whatever that consists of, to be ready, like a wallet to pay for lunch or whatever. And I last check the mirror to make sure my glasses are not crooked. Before I leave the house, I stand in a full-length mirror and check that my blouse is not tucked in the wrong place. So I think that we do things. I guess I would just like for us to maybe contemplate on that part, that we do things automatically, but not thinking about it in this fashion. So sometimes just owning that we own, like you said, we do this a lot. So you feel the pit of your stomach. In my group, I referred to that. I don't know, the longer I practice, when I want to say something, I don't have to look for it. It goes to the pit of my stomach. What I'm going to say next. A lot, not all the time, but so I think we do this. So I think kind of noticing how we do it. It's not like we have to start from scratch. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Monica.
Yes, I just wanted to recommend his book, his newer, it's about a year and a half old, 2 years. So it's Oren J. Sofer, S-O-F-E-R, and it's called Say What You Mean, and it's all on communication, things you talked about, Laurie, and exercises in it. Anyway, I highly recommend that book.
I have a copy of that book. You know, maybe, I don't know if anybody else would be interested. It'd be nice to get a group together and work through the practice. You need to have buddies to do it. So
Yeah, I've been doing it with my husband.
maybe we can think about doing that if somebody's interested.
He's also starting a 12-week course where he goes through the book. It starts in September.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too.
I did his first class when he did that. That's when I got the book. Yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah. Good to hear. Okay. Well, I guess we should, it's 11:06. So we should stop this, and let me go back to the other over there, and we'll do our chants and finish up.